Hello, everybody. And I am actually recording this in January of 2024. So happy new year. I hope everyone had a good happy new year, happy holidays. I know for me, the new year has already kind of been kicking my butt a little bit, but hey, here we are, right? And I wanted to talk about this topic because I love this time of the year. Like I love like reflecting and looking at everything for the past year and getting into all this new energy and beliefs and intentions and goals. And I love it, love it, love it. So I thought it would be a perfect time to talk about the concept of beliefs because it can really actually be the driving force for all the things that you actually want to happen in your life, including all the things you want to happen on your CRNA journey as well. And I really don't think that we talk about this enough, right? Because eventually you are only going to go as far as your beliefs are going to allow you to go, or you will go really far, but the whole way there, you are literally exhausted and burned out because you are fighting yourself and you are fighting your beliefs about what you are capable of in the process the entire way there. Okay. Which isn't very fun. And guys, what you believe about yourself is and will always be more important than what other people believe about you. Okay. And the crazy and funny thing is about beliefs is that essentially, before you were 7 years old, a lot of what you believe about yourself and the world were shaped, right? And a lot of it you didn't even have any like say over, right? Because you're like a child. So by the time you're 7, a lot of beliefs, a lot of the way that you see the world was actually already formed. Okay. So as you're sitting here listening to this, each one of us has basically these core beliefs or these universal beliefs, right? That are just ingrained in us, right? And I just want to offer that this is part of being human. And no matter what you see on social media, right? Everybody struggles with some type of core belief or something. Okay. So things like I'm defective, right? I'm not good enough. I should be different. I'm a failure. It's other people's jobs to make me happy. That's a belief, guys. I don't belong. Huge thing for me, right? I struggle with belonging, right? That's a huge one for me. Beliefs like I'm powerless. I have no control over anything. I have to be perfect. I have to please everyone. Money will make me happy. Here's one. Getting into CRNA school and being a CRNA school will make me happy, right? That's a belief. And while, yeah, it'll make you happy and it's exciting, right? Like it can't be the sole thing that you are putting your worth and your life on, right? There's so much more than that, right? So as I was saying those, I'm just curious, are any of those resonating with you? Is there anything coming up, right? Because chances are there is some underlying belief that you have about yourself that possibly could be someone else's opinion that you picked up along the way. And essentially, you have just come to believe it. It has become imprinted in you, almost like a piece of your DNA, right? And I also want to say your negative thinking about yourself is not unique to you. Okay. You are not the only one that thinks negative about yourself, even though it might feel that way, especially in the age of like social media and seeing just people's highlights, right? We all have a belief system that we have picked up, and it is either helping us or it is not serving us or it is not helping us, right? And it is basically how we filter, it is how we see, it is how we process the world. And what happens is we're going along, like living our lives, and then something super challenging comes up, right? Or we're applying to CRNA schools. We didn't get in. We got rejected. We didn't get an interview. Or we got a C in CRNA school, right? Like something happens, right? And this is where that belief comes up, right? Because what happens is that if you have this belief, like I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, right? What happens is you're silently like looking for that all over the place. And then when something happens, like all the challenges that come up on your way to CRNA, your brain's like, oh, yep, there it is. I got confirmation. I got validation. I'm dumb. I'm not smart enough. Everything is hopeless. Nothing's going to work for me, right? All the things. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say that I don't think anyone talks as badly about you than you might talk or think about yourself. right? Because the thing is you have these beliefs, right? These kind of core beliefs that you have, and no one's ever taught you to challenge those, right? No one's ever told us to like challenge those or get curious or ask questions, right? We just kind of unconsciously accept it, or we accept what others say about us. And then something happens and it's like, yep, validated. Didn't get the intubation. Yep, I'm stupid. Didn't get into school. Yep, I'm an idiot. My parents were right. Mrs. Smith was right. Like whatever the case may be, right? And that is essentially the word, like the term for that is basically confirmation bias, right? It's our human tendency to favor information that confirms or strengthens our own beliefs, right? Or it's like our underlying tendency to notice, focus on, and give like a greater credence to evidence that fits within that belief. So it's like if you have this, I don't belong, you're going to constantly be like, yep, I didn't get in, I don't belong, or I don't belong here in CRNA school. You're going to constantly be looking for evidence as to why that is true, right? If you don't think you're smart enough, you're going to constantly have a filter on that is going to be looking for all the evidence that confirms that, right? So, and then on the other side too is looking at people who critique you or are criticizing you or maybe unkind, or they say something that like triggers you. Look at that trigger, because that very well could be pressing on a belief that you have about yourself, right? Like everybody around us is essentially mirroring back to us pieces of ourselves. And a lot of things and people that trigger us, it's usually something underlying, right? And this is a lot of the work that we kind of uncover and unpack in my coaching program, because it's so crucial to like look at these things and challenge our beliefs and become aware of them so that we can decide, do I want to keep this moving forward, or can I like tweak this? And essentially that's what we're going to talk about in this episode a little bit. I'm going to break down what beliefs are, how they are holding your back. And of course, we're going to talk about what you can do about it, right? So you can shift, you can up-level your life, and you can put all things into practice right now. All right. So super excited. Let's dig in. So all a belief is, I know I've like said this word 30 times already. It's just a thought that you have practiced over and over and over again, right? Like a lot of these thoughts, a lot of these words have gotten into our brain by the age of 7, and then we have just practiced it. We have just repeated it. So it's almost been like burned track into our brain, right? And then we go out and we confirm it via confirmation bias. And then all of a sudden that thought becomes a belief because we practice it and we looked for it over and over and over in your head, right? It's like just ingrained in there, smushed in, right? And I'm going to caveat this episode with, this is not an invitation to just think positive and everything will be fine, because that is not how I coach. That is not what I think is the actually answer, right? It's more about, let's get aware, let's get curious, let's challenge some of these thoughts that probably are just outdated and probably are not even true, right? And if you get nothing else, from this episode, I want you to hear me on this. You are not your thoughts. You are not your beliefs. You are also not a bad person for having certain thoughts about yourself. You are just simply a human being, right? But you are not who your thoughts say you are. And not everything that goes through your brain is true, right? But the really good news is that at any point, you can change your thoughts, you can change your beliefs, and you can always change how you show up in the world, and you can change how you deal with other people and how you deal with things that trigger you, right? So I want you to start thinking about, what do I want to believe about myself? How can I build up a belief system that supports where I want to go, that supports who I am, that supports my worth, right? My intrinsic, untouchable self-worth, right? When you can start thinking like that, everything is going to change for you. When you can start building up a belief system that supports where you want to go and your worth. CRNA school applications aren't going to feel so heavy and painful, right? Because you're not constantly like have this nagging, I'm not smart enough thought, and then you're confirming it. And then when things don't go your way, you're like, yep, I suck. I'm not worthy. I shouldn't do that, right? Bad days at clinical aren't going to be so crushing because you've got a different belief system, right? Like you've started to think differently and you've started to show up differently, and you know that your worth is not touchable. No one can touch it, right? Feedback from other people is not going to sting as much because you're able to see that, but you don't have to adopt it as like, oh, that's true. Like, yep, that someone said that to me when I was in second grade and now here it is again. So, yep, I'm just stupid, right? No, you can take that and be like, you know what? My worth is untouchable. This is not something I believe, right? This is not in alignment with the person I want to be. You can always choose how you want to show up, no matter what anyone else is saying, right? So, the first step in building this new belief system is literally just being here, listening to this, and just becoming aware of what some of your beliefs are. Like, that's all I want you guys to do. Like, as you're listening to this, as you go about your day, as you go about your week, like, just start thinking about, like, what are some of the nagging thoughts that aren't fun to think, that I feel like are holding me back, right? From showing up at clinical more boldly and as a leader, or forgetting my applications are. So just start noticing them, just being aware of them, because once you are aware of what they are, then we can start to build evidence for the opposite, right? So instead of like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, right? How can we start looking at the ways that you actually are smart enough, right? Your brains are always going to go to negative. It's like a survival thing, right? Everybody is negative, right? We are wired to survive, but we can override this primitive thinking, this negative kind of survival thinking, and we can start to engage more with our frontal cortex, or the kind of this more logical frontal portion of our head, right? So I want you to think about, like, how are you smart enough? Right? What is the evidence that maybe the opposite of I'm not smart enough could be true? Like, well, I got into nursing school, right? I passed it. I'm working. I'm doing the CCRN. I got into school. I'm right. Like, what, like, challenge that, guys. What is the evidence for the opposite of something negative you believe about yourself, right? Because yes, it is so easy to go down the negative path and be like, well, this didn't happen. I messed this up, blah, 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 because you've got this belief like burned, ingrained into your head. Let's start building a new track. And it takes a little bit of energy, but not a ton, to just lean into, like, what if something else could be true? What if the opposite could be true, right? What are some things that you have overcome? How have you shown strength? How have you shown resilience? Like, think about those things. Redirect your brain to other things that could be true, right? And this is so crucial when you're prepping for CRNA school interviews, when you're writing your personal statements, when you're showing up in clinical, right? Is always looking for the evidence that you are going to be an asset to a CRNA program, to your clinical site, right? Like, that is your job. It is your job to utilize your strengths, grow from your weaknesses, and decide to believe that you are valuable and you are worthy and you should be taking up space where you are, right? Like, when you're prepping for interviews, CRNA interviews and applications, you are essentially building a body of evidence that you are capable of getting into and getting through their program, right? Like, if you don't believe it, if you don't believe in yourself, same goes for clinical. If you don't believe in your value that you can provide, how is anybody else going to believe that, right? You have to be convicted in the belief, in the possibility, in the inevitability of what you are capable of, so that it can come off when you are in your interviews, when you're putting together your application package, and when you are in CRNA school clinical, right? It's showing up with this conviction of, like, you know what? I might not know everything. I may be a novice, but I can start to believe that I am capable, that I have gotten this far, and that I am smart enough and that I am good enough to be able to figure out anything that comes my way. You don't have to know everything in order to show up in a leader capacity, in order to show up with value, right? You just have to tweak what you believe. I believe that I belong here because I am here, right? My entire business is about building CRNA leaders. And you want to know what leadership is? A transfer of belief, right? Because that's what you are doing your entire way to CRNA, from the application process to, didactic work to clinical, and then becoming a CRNA, right? Like, when I go in my room to see my patients, and even those of you like working as nurses, right? Like, you are establishing rapport, but you are also like having them build belief in you as a provider, right? How can you expect anybody else to believe that you are an asset to that program if you don't believe it at all? How can you sell your anesthetic and your belief in your ability to provide good care for your patients if you don't believe it? How can you expect your preceptors to believe in you if you don't believe in you, right? I don't care if you show up with the teeniest, tiniest shred of belief in yourself, right? Like just a little tiny piece, a little bit more than you had yesterday. That is your responsibility. It is not anybody's responsibility to validate you and to build belief for you. You have to do it. It is your job. It is your work, right? We have to let go of this lie, of this belief that we have to have everything together and everything figured out and everything perfect before we can move forward or be successful or add value. That is not true. You can add value. You can add value. You can bring the best leadership version of yourself that you're capable in the day by just capable of in this day with just the tiniest shred of belief, right? We have to believe that things are possible, that we can figure out the detours, that we can figure out the roadblocks, and we can trust that everything will work out in some way, some shape or form if we show up and do our part. And a lot of your part is holding belief in yourself, right? That your capabilities can far exceed your fears. In my coaching program, I have this concept called the belief triad that I actually first heard about from one of the coaches, Stacey Bayman, but I've kind of modified it for the CRNA school process. But it gives people a kind of a place to focus on, to focus their belief on, right? So there are three crucial parts that you need to focus your belief on. One is you, yourself. One is believing in the effort that you put forward and believing in the process, right? If you can start to build up your belief in even just one of these areas, things are going to start to change in yourself, in your effort, and in the process, right? And the super fun part is you get to choose to believe anything you want about yourself. You get to choose to believe anything you want about the process, right? The CRNA school process does work. Otherwise, me and countless others would not be CRNAs, right? Like it does work. You've gotten somewhere in life. You've done something in life, right? You're somewhere. So you work. You are capable. You are possible, right? Your effort does work, right? So once you've kind of noticed what that limiting belief is, or that core belief that's really loud and like holding you back, and you start to challenge it with different evidence, then we can start to believe something different. We can start looking for the opposite of evidence, right? So there's another community I follow. It's called TBM or To Be Magnetic, and they actually call expansion. Like they talk about belief. They talk about like expanding your mind, right? And so if you're going to be on social media, instead of using it against yourself, what other people are doing, use it to your advantage. Fill your social feed, fill your house, fill your life, your people you're around with things that expand your mind to see what is possible. Because if you can see other people having the things that you want to have or things close to it, it helps your brain believe that you can have it too. Right? So stop using social media as a weapon and start using it to fuel the beliefs that you want to have about yourself, right? Wow, they passed boards over there. Fantastic. Wow, they got into school. Wow, they got into that ICU. That's amazing, right? Not what is wrong with me? Oh my God, they don't even have that much experience, right? Like, no, use that to your brain of like, this is possible. It's possible for them. It can be possible for me. I just have to figure out my own way and my own journey to get there, right? We all are going to get to places in our lives differently, right? And like I said before, when people start triggering you, when you start feeling jealous and frustrated or envy, right? Just shift into, wow, that is amazing for them. All that means is that I can do it too, right? And remember, social media is just a highlight feed, okay? You're just seeing snippets of people's life, okay? But utilize it at least to your advantage to expand your mind as to what is possible, right? Believing that something is possible mentally can change literally what we are physically capable of doing. All right. And the more you get aware of kind of what your beliefs are and you challenge them, you actually are creating new neural pathways in your head that is going to overwrite all the I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough stuff. Right. Here's a great thought to try on. Success is more achievable than the limiting narrative my primitive brain leads me to believe. Success is more achievable than the limiting narrative my primitive brain leads me to believe, right? Remember, we are automated at baseline. We are wired to survive. So negativity is always going to feel natural and easy, but it doesn't have to be the end of your story, right? It doesn't have to be where things end. All right. So lastly, guys, go back and think back to what made you magic. What makes you unique? Who were you before the world told you who you should be? Like, what did you play with as a kid? What did you do? What did you used to believe in? What did you used to believe you could do? Right? Like, remember how much fun it was? Like, maybe it was just me of like playing pretend and make believe and dress. Oh my God, I love doing that. I still love daydreaming. I love daydreaming, right? Who were you? What did you think you were capable of before the world told you who you should be? Because that person is still inside of you. They just are a little covered up and we just have to like dust that off, right? All you're doing now in this CRNA phase is you're putting on a different hat of CRNA. We are shifting that identity, right? You are still who you are, but you're coming into a new identity. But your value and your worth, your unique perspective, the perception that you have of the world, right? Like that is all you. And the CRNA community needs that. Like, don't dim yourself down. Don't play small because of these crazy beliefs you have, right? But instead, like, go back to what made you magic. Go back to that and lean into that because that person that's inside of you that is like hidden is what the CRNA community needs, right? Like, could you just start believing that? Could you just start believing that who you are is what the CRNA world needs? Could you start believing that today? As we enter in this new fresh year, right? Or even if you're listening to this in the middle of the year, it doesn't even matter. But what if we didn't spend so much time fighting ourselves, but just allowed ourselves to just kind of be who you've always been? And just continue growing on top of it, right? Like if we can kind of dig down into that version of you before, limiting beliefs, before we took other people's thoughts and opinions as just like the word, right? Because we tuck away ourselves because it's easier to people please and we like to be liked. It's just part of being human, right? But I want to encourage you to courageously be yourself and believe that you have something incredibly unique to not only offer the world, but the CRNA world, right? I want you to think back to last year. What is something that you wanted to do, but because of fear and because of unbelief, you didn't allow yourself to go all in? I'm going to challenge you to go all in this year in whatever it is. Ever you're at in your CRNA journey, or even something non-related to CRNA, right? I'm going to just encourage you to go all in with that and decide to believe different things. The fear is still probably going to be there, but you get to choose what you want to believe about yourself. That's the fun part because everything that is in your head, every belief, every thought is optional, right? And you can also keep what other people say about you, right? You can keep that separate. That can be over here. You can decide what you want to do with that, but it doesn't have to affect what you believe about yourself, right? What do you need to believe before you start this journey of CRNA? Or if you're in the middle of CRNA school, or if you're nearing the end, what do you want to believe about yourself, about your effort, and about the process? Because you always get to decide that. You are not what people say about you, and you are not your thoughts. And really, guys, it takes more energy to like not believe and to be negative and like to be triggered. Like it's so heavy. It takes up so much energy, so much space, right? Than just leaning into like, what if I just believe today that I was capable, that I can figure anything out? Because it's really hard to troubleshoot when you are in constant disbelief and shame and in low worth. Like your energy is so low. And this is how kind of like I talked about earlier is like you're only going to get as far as your belief allows you to go. Like this is how unbelief looks because it just translates into burnout. It's really exhausting to believe that you are not enough. That's exhausting and it's just no way to live and it's no way to go after your dreams, right? So at the time of recording this, like I said, like I'm recording this in January, so we're just coming off the holiday season. And in my house, we celebrate Christmas. And I have a toddler, and he loves the Polar Express movie. I don't know if you've seen it, but it is like a staple in my house. And it really does, like having that movie on, having the soundtrack on, watching my boys, like it creates so much magic. And I just love getting caught up, like basically in the spirit of believing, right? The spirit of the holidays, right? And I love this quote from the movie. It says, "Seeing is believing, but sometimes the most real things in the world are the things that we can't see." Like your effort, right? Your belief, the things that we cannot see are sometimes the most real things in the world. Your invisible daily effort, right? The things you do behind the scenes are going to eventually become the life that you dream of, right? And the movie goes on to say, basically it's like a little boy that does not believe in, Santa anymore, right? And it talks about belief, right? And it says like we fear, like the reasons we don't want to believe in things is because we fear being bamboozled. We don't want to be hoodwinked or conned. We don't want to have the wool pulled over our eyes, right? We don't want to be railroaded. So it's easier to not believe so that we don't get hurt or that we don't look stupid, right? Than it is to believe. That's the lie. That's what our brain tells us. It's just easier to be negative and not believe because that way we won't be hurt and we'll stay safe, right? But facing your fears, going for your dreams, believing in something that you've never believed in before. Yes, it takes immense courage and immense commitment, but that's the kind of life I want to live. Maybe I'll get hurt. Maybe things won't work out as planned. But man, I did not play small and I went for it, right? I would rather live in that camp than live in this constantly fear of what are others thinking about me or what are they blaming, right? Like that's heavy, right? That's not fun. That's like burnout mode, right? That's not what leadership should be about, right? So essentially, back to this movie, the little boy in the Polar Express movie, he didn't write Santa a letter that year. He didn't take a picture with Santa at the mall. He didn't put out any milk and cookies. And Tom Hanks is a conductor. And when he pulls up to the boy's house in this train, he says, "It sounds like this is your crucial year. If I were you, I would think about climbing on board." Because one thing about trains is, it doesn't matter where they're going. What matters is deciding to get on. So is this your crucial year? Where you start to question the beliefs that maybe aren't serving you, the beliefs that aren't pushing you towards your dreams. Is this your crucial year? And will you climb on board to ride the train to what you think is impossible? But if you can hold on to a shred of belief that maybe CRNA is possible for me, would you get on the train? Because what we believe to be the most true is what is going to come to fruition in our lives. And are you willing to question what's coming up in your head? Are you willing to question those thoughts? Because not everything is true. Are you willing to question that? Are you willing to get courageous and dirty and committed, right, on the way to your dreams? So let's recap really quick. I want you to start, number one, I want you to start noticing and becoming aware of what is super loud in your head that is not serving you. And I want you to start pivoting into what could the opposite be true, right? Start finding new evidence, start challenging those thoughts. Number two, I want you to allow people to inspire you. I want you to see other people succeeding in what you want. And I want it to push you towards your own version of success, not perpetuate your poopy belief system that you're less than, right? But instead encourage you to move forward. I want you to take people off pedestals and look at them at like, wow, that's awesome. How can I create and be my own version of that? My own version of an aspiring CRNA, right? And third, decide what you want to believe about yourself. What are your craziest dreams for the year? And what do you want to believe about yourself, your effort in the process? So you can start chipping away at those dreams today, right? What do you want to believe? And I want you to spend the rest of the day wondering, right? Searching for evidence of like, what if this could be true for me, right? Give your brain direction and start believing in the life that you want to create. Because if nothing else, isn't it just more fun to believe? Anything is truly possible. So have a magical week. Have a happy new year. I will see you on the next episode. And may you believe in the power of yourself and your dreams. Have an awesome day, guys.